There's a clear difference between a mistake and a decision. A mistake happens by accident. You fix it, you apologize, and you move on. A decision, especially a bad one, is something you choose to do even when you understand the risks and the consequences, because you believe you'll get away with it. What the HOA did to me wasn't a mistake. It was a decision, and they paid for it. I own a piece of land just outside a private neighborhood. One of those perfectly curated developments with matching mailboxes, identical lawns, and a rule book covering everything from fence height to holiday decorations. I'm not part of their HOA. Never have been. And that fact has always bothered them far more than it's ever bothered me. My property sits directly between the main road and their neighborhood. Years ago, long before the development was ever built, the original owner constructed a small but solid bridge over a narrow creek that cuts through the land. It's not massive, just wide enough for vehicles, reinforced with steel beams underneath and maintained regularly. It also happens to be the only practical way in and out of their entire neighborhood. Technically, there's another route on paper, a longer, unpaved path that becomes useless after heavy rain. But for all practical purposes, my bridge is their lifeline. When I bought the property, I knew how things worked. There was no formal easement, no written agreement, just a long-standing and formal understanding that residents could use the bridge to access their homes. And honestly, I was fine with that. I maintained it, kept it safe, and never charged anyone for using it. All I expected in return was basic respect. Apparently, that was too much to ask. My first real encounter with the HOA came about 3 months after I moved in. A letter showed up in my mailbox. No greeting, no introduction, just a list of complaints. They didn't like the condition of the bridge. According to them, it didn't meet their community safety standards. I remember reading that line twice. Their standards for my bridge on my property. I ignored the letter, assuming that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, another one arrived, this time with stronger wording. They claimed the bridge posed a liability risk to their residents and demanded that I either upgrade it to meet their specifications or restrict access entirely. I almost laughed. They wanted me to spend my money improving something they use for free. That wasn't happening. So I responded, short and direct. This bridge is private property. It is structurally sound and regularly maintained. If you believe it is unsafe, you are free to stop using it. That should have settled the issue. Instead, it escalated. Over the following weeks, the HOA started applying pressure, emails, letters, even a visit from their property manager, who tried to convince me that upgrading the bridge would benefit everyone. I declined politely at first, then less politely when it became obvious they weren't asking anymore. They were pushing, and when pushing didn't work, they made a decision. I found out what they did on a Tuesday morning. I had been out of town for 2 days. When I came back, something felt off, too quiet, too open. As I drove along the main road toward my property, I noticed a line of cars parked along the side. Residents from a neighborhood were walking back and forth, looking frustrated. That's when I saw it, or rather, didn't see it. The bridge was gone. Not damaged, not partially taken apart, gone. Completely torn down. In its place was nothing but a muddy gap where the creek ran through, tire tracks cutting across the ground, and debris scattered everywhere. For a moment, I just sat there in my truck, staring, trying to process what I was seeing. Then the anger hit, fast, sharp, unreal. They didn't warn me. They didn't ask. They didn't even leave a note. They just showed up and destroyed a structure on my property, like it belonged to them. I stepped out of the truck and walked to the edge of the creek. Pieces of the bridge had been piled off to the side, wooden planks, twisted metal supports, all clearly removed using heavy equipment. This wasn't random vandalism. This was organized, deliberate, and incredibly illegal. I didn't confront anyone right away. I didn't yell, didn't call, didn't make a scene, because at that moment, I knew something they didn't. They had just handed me all the leverage I could ever need. The first thing I did was document everything. Photos, videos, close-ups of the damage, wide shots showing property boundaries. Then I called the county and filed a report for unauthorized demolition and property damage. After that, I made another call, not to rebuild the bridge, not yet, but for something else entirely. Remember that secondary access route I mentioned? The unpaved one that becomes unusable after rain? Here's the part the HOA conveniently ignored. That road also crosses my property, a small stretch near the entrance. It's not obvious unless you check the land records. But I had, and it meant one very important thing. Without my land, they had no access. None. By the end of the day, I had workers on site, heavy equipment barriers, and a very clear plan. We didn't destroy anything, didn't damage the road. We simply blocked it legally. Large steel barricades went up at the property line. Clear signage, private property, no access. And just like that, the entire neighborhood was cut off. The reaction was immediate. By evening, my phone was blowing up. Residents, contractors, delivery drivers, all confused, angry, panicked. What they thought would be a minor inconvenience they could pressure me into fixing had turned into a full-blown access crisis. Emergency services would have to reroute. Commutes were disrupted. And suddenly the bridge they complained about didn't seem so bad anymore. The HOA contacted me that night, demanding, of course, you need to restore access immediately. No, I replied calmly. You need to explain why you tore down my bridge. Silence. Then deflection. It was unsafe. It was inspected 6 months ago. I cut in and approved. Another pause. Then we acted in the best interest of the community. I let out a short laugh. You acted without permission, I said, on property you don't own. The next day, things escalated. They threatened legal action. I encouraged it, because by then, the county had already responded to my report, and they were very interested. Unauthorized demolition, property destruction, potential code violations, the kind of issues that don't just disappear. By the second day, their tone changed completely. No more demands. Now it was requests. Can we meet to discuss a resolution? Of course we could. We met that afternoon. This time, they didn't arrive with a list of demands. They came with concern. I laid everything out, the damage, the legal implications, the cost of rebuilding, and then I made it simple. You pay for a full reconstruction of the bridge. I said, to my specifications, not yours. They nodded quickly, and I continued, compensation for unauthorized demolition and disruption. There was some hesitation there, but not much. They knew they didn't have a strong position anymore, not even close. It took 2 days to finalize everything. Payment agreements, written acknowledgments, legal assurances that nothing like this would ever happen again. Only then did I remove the barriers from the secondary road. Access was restored temporarily, because rebuilding the bridge would take time. Construction started the following week, and this time I didn't just rebuild it, I improved it. Stronger materials, better structural support, higher load capacity. And one more thing, a gate installed right at the entrance. On my side, it stays open most days, but it doesn't have to, and everyone knows it. The HOA hasn't contacted me since. No letters, no suggestions. No attempts to control something that was never theirs to begin with, because now they understand something they didn't before. Access isn't a right, especially when it depends on someone else's property. It's a privilege, and privileges can be taken away. These days, life is quiet again. The creek flows. The bridge stands.